B-Wallet, unfairly private.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. I hope you're having a good week. I am. I have continued to travel throughout Greece. I am currently on the island of Naxos after a brief stopover in Mykonos. So continuing on in my adventure, I've got an awesome panel for you guys today. Be sure to smash that like button, give this a share, and subscribe if you haven't already. All those things really help the show. As always, this is Why Are We Bullish? I'm Ben with the BTC Sessions. This is your daily session.
Hodl the Bitcoin.
Before we bring in our panel, of course, shout out to sponsors of the show, LEDN.io, where you can use your Bitcoin for a variety of different services. Of course, they have their Bitcoin-backed loans, where if you're in a pinch and you need to get your hands on dollars, but you don't want to sell your Bitcoin because, well, who wants to sell their Bitcoin? But also, you may be worried about it being a taxable event and having to buy back in at a higher price. Well, you can instead use a Bitcoin-backed loan, deposit your Bitcoin, get dollars in your bank account within 24 hours, pay back that loan, and get back the same number of sats. Now, up next, we have Bitbuy Canada. If you're stacking sats in Canada, very, very simple, easy to use, awesome place to do it. Their web interface is really easy to navigate. They have an awesome dedicated app for iOS and Android, and after your first $250 purchase, they'll give you 20 bucks for free. Now, I do live on Bitcoin. Bitrefill really helps me with this because they have just about every gift card I could imagine, and you can pay for it with Bitcoin via main chain or Lightning Network, which I do all the time for those fast, instant, cheap transactions, available in tons of different countries, and you actually get sats back as you spend. And they've got a pretty killer referral program, so if you got friends and family that might be interested, that can really help you out as well. Keystone, you guys know these guys, formerly Kobo Vault, the same awesome air-gapped hardware wallet, meaning you never plug the thing into anything internet connected. It is all done offline via QR code, keeping your funds safe and away from any devious internet connections. They do have Bitcoin-only firmware, and I love the thing. It's so solid. It's easy to use on the go with things like Blue Wallet or Wasabi Wallet or Sparrow or Spectre, all of those great things. Lots of fun. I have a tutorial. Check them out. Links down below. And finally, if you're backing up any important Bitcoin wallet, be sure to get it in solid steel with something like the BillFodl over at privacypros.io. If you're putting it on paper, you open yourself up to worry when it comes to fire damage, water damage, or just accidentally discarding the thing. I've heard horror stories. Give yourself some peace of mind. Get a BillFodl. And now, enough of my rambling. Let's get into the show. Let's bring in our panel. All right, gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Very excited to have you all for Why Are We Bullish? All first-time guests. I'm so excited to have you all. I'm going to go down the line and get you guys to do a little self-intro, who you are, what you do, and then we'll get rolling here. So, Mr. Bitcoin Mechanic, do you want to give yourself a little intro and let people know what you do?
Yeah, for sure, man. So I'm an old school Bitcoiner. I've been around for about 10 years now. I've been obsessed. I discovered it 10 years ago. I went full obsessed 9 years ago, I'd say. I lurked in the space pretty much the entire time, but apart from the fork wars where I've got the scars to show what a painful year 2017 was, but not much. Right now, I'm working for Start9, who are a company that make not just a full node, but some other bits and pieces, a whole self-sovereign suite of digital applications that you can use to get rid of, not just rely on third parties for things like your Bitcoin transactions, or Lightning channel management or anything like that, but also social networking and file storage and password management, all that stuff. So we're trying to see if we can expand the whole idea of self-sovereignty from money, which is Bitcoin, to all the other things we do online as well, and see if we can get it to translate.
Awesome. That's exciting. I really want to get my hands on Start9 and start playing with it. That's on the agenda for when I get home and I have my base back. So I'll reach out. We'll talk, my friend.
Yeah, we should do a video on it and set one up together. It's called an embassy when you have the actual Pi in your hand. And there's a lot of similar projects in the space. But anyway, I'll let other people start introing themselves before I waffle on about that.
No worries. Awesome. Mr. Bitcoin Meme Hub, longtime fan. Glad to have you on. Can you give yourself a little intro? Let people know what you do.
Sure. I'm just a shit poster on Twitter, basically. Just kind of like spreading the gospel, because kind of like, there's a saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So that's what I do, more or less. I have a proper job as well. I work in a big advertising company, but like kind of Bitcoin is my hobby, and kind of it got into a passion where I'm ready to quit my job and just kind of full time jump into Bitcoin to help Bitcoin. Because I think there's a lot of kind of like spaces and kind of like in the advertising and kind of like making it more accessible to users or the general public in itself. And yeah, I'm just so passionate about it.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad to have you, and I'm sure people watching will be familiar with the shit posting. I'm sure we'll have a few plebs in the chat. Max, take it away. Let people know who you are, what you do.
Well, thanks very much, Ben, for the invite. I really love talking about Bitcoin. That's what I do for most of my time, because I'm an economist by trade and one of the praxeological tradition of Austrian economics. So that means that logical reasoning and thinking and verbal deductive arguments I find very fascinating. And of course, the podcasting space is exactly the place to do that. But I don't only talk, although that's the most of it. I also like to contribute to free software projects. But since I'm a noob and cannot code, well, again, most of my contributions are by talking. So that's why I have such a good microphone, you see. No, but other than that, I love talking about how individuals can protect their property rights and use the free software tools at their disposal. That's just vitally important in this day and age and in these crazy times.
Awesome, dude. Well, I am very humbled and excited to have you on, because I've watched and listened to you for quite some time. Let's toss it down the line. Jan, welcome to the show. Let people know who you are, what you do.
All right. Thanks for having me in the show. So my name is Jan. We are the guys behind Slushpool. I've been around since 2013, and essentially we have started Brains, and at that time Slush basically was tired of running the pool, so we made it into a professional project, running it through a company. We have been doing it for the past 8 years. In the past year, we have acquired the remaining 1/3 of the pool share. So essentially now the company Brains is the owning company of the project. We have yet another project that's called Brains OS. We started as a firmware for mining machines and miners, originally T1s. We have some open source parts, and we're working on adding new hardware lately. The reason why we thought it would be a good idea to do this is that people don't talk about decentralization in terms of like where the hash rate physically is. Now it has moved a lot, but when you look at it, a lot of hash rate or the machines that can produce the hash rate are coming from China, and we thought it's a good idea to have some counterbalance to the original factory firmwares. And we thought that could be a good business opportunity. So that's what we do. And yeah, the pool itself is a running project with the new features. We just recently launched the V4, which has a complete, facelift, web overhaul, and many new features. So that's what we do. I mean, okay, I'm not getting into the details why we're bullish yet.
Does it have the S19 yet?
Which one? Sorry.
Does it have the Antminer S19?
It's coming out in September. So we're testing it. So we're almost there.
Nice. It's a great project, man.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you, Jan. I'm glad to have all of you guys on the show. We're going to get rolling. Anybody that is unfamiliar with why are we bullish, very simple. We go by the 3 R's. Basically, somebody gives a reason why they're feeling bullish. We all riff on the reason together, and then we rotate to the next person. So really simple. I'm going to get us started. I'm bullish this week because I've been reading When Money Dies. And it's a hell of a book. If you're unfamiliar with it, basically documents the delve into hyperinflation in Weimar Germany through the early 1920s, and it is a harrowing read. I'm not fully finished yet, but there was something that stuck out to me today when I was reading, and I'll read the quote here. And it has to do with the velocity of money. And I'll give a reason as to why this made me bullish. But here's the quote here. It said, anyone receiving money for goods quickly converted it back into other goods, and the money never stopped moving, doing the work of 10 times the amount, moving a tenth as fast. So what they're getting at is the velocity of money, the speed at which it's changing hands was very, very quick. People were exchanging it back and forth for goods very quickly, faster than would have happened under normal circumstances, meaning that the money was working much more quickly, facilitating much more trade than typically would have been facilitated because of that hyperinflation. And the reason that I'm so bullish on that quote is the fact that in the face of a money whose velocity is naturally orders of magnitude quicker than the fiat money we have right now, Bitcoin continues to appreciate in value because people value it so much. And I hadn't really delved into that concept before, the velocity of money, in terms of it being kind of a downward pressure on the purchasing power of money. But I like the idea that, again, in the face of not only the base layer of Bitcoin having a velocity that is much quicker than our central bank and commercial bank clearance systems, but Lightning on top of that, facilitating effectively instant commerce at tiny fees. In spite of that, it continues to accrue value because we're so early, and because of, again, its limited issuance. And so it was just an angle I hadn't really appreciated before, and that kind of got me excited of how resilient Bitcoin is, and again, how early we are in the adoption of Bitcoin, I suppose. So anyways, I'm going to open it up. First of all, if anybody's read When Money Dies and you have any thoughts on it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But if anybody wants to chat about the velocity of money, anything in that realm, feel free to chime in. So has anybody here actually read When Money Dies?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal book. And in fact, they hand it out for free at the Mises University and the Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama. So peers, go there to the library. It's really worth checking out. And the book is phenomenal, as it really shows, in an applied kind of scenario, the inevitable use case or consequences of increasing the money supply. For whatever reason or whatever justification, in this case, it was war and the repayment of war debts. As soon as the money supply increases, that means that those who receive the newly created money first gain at the expense of those who receive newly printed money later. And that means not only in the percentage of their holdings compared to the money supply, the so to say purchasing power of their units held. That's only the first thing. But the other is actually that as soon as those people understand that there's new money in the economy being printed, and as soon as those areas of the economy that receive that money first, then the entrepreneurs tend to adjust the prices, right? As demand increases because of the newly printed money, the prices tend to go up. And here also, those who receive the newly printed money adjust their prices much earlier than those who receive newly printed money later. And actually, that price adjustment is the core of the Cantillon effect, by the way. And it is just scary to see how we're obviously making the same mistakes again 100 years later with this new regime of the fiat standard that, well, Bitcoin is here to fix, right? That's why I'm at least very bullish.
It's interesting how in the book they talk about how people they didn't make the connection that the value of their marks were going down, but rather they assumed that everything was becoming more expensive, and they placed the blame on the merchants that were just trying to, you know, have some degree of self-preservation, and they also placed the blame on at least for a while on other countries whose value of their dollars or pounds were retaining their value in relation to the mark. So they would say, oh, the dollar went up again, instead of, oh, the mark went down again, because in their kind of microcosm of the world economy, to them, everything else was going up. They couldn't fathom the idea that their money was going down. It was really interesting. And if anybody wants to jump in as well, feel free to.
When I was like 6 years old, my parents had or we still have it, a house, a small cottage in the mountains. And when we bought it, it was actually an old house with, you know, all these relics from the beginning of the century. And what I actually discovered, there was like a small envelope. When I opened it, there were like the German marks, but these were already the million banknotes. And at that time, I was like, wow, this is a lot of money. And then I had this discussion with my dad, explaining me that, well, actually, this was not worth even, like, you know, you should put it into a stove. You know, they used it for heating because you couldn't buy a bread with that. Recently, I'm kind of afraid that you just exhausted my reasoning as well with this, but let's wait with it. Back in 2019, I got the purse made from the Venezuelan bolivars. It was being sold at some conference, and I even bought a small backpack for my daughter. So this is really a topic that not too many people realize. And I think we are in our own bubble as Bitcoiners, that we do like watch for all these things, and we're like seeing, I don't think we're seeing like Bitcoin appreciation, but this is the depreciation of all the fiat paper, you know, toy money. That's the problem. And then I think Max already hit a few points, basically saying that the merchants are greedy and they're like increasing the prices. But the problem is that the merchants also have inputs. They have to, you know, pay whatever transportation for all the goods. They have to buy the raw materials if they're actually manufacturing and directly selling, you know, and it all adds up. And I actually had a talk with a friend of mine who has a big machining shop, and he produces like parts in thousands of pieces on CNC lathes. And he said, wow, the iron material, which used to be like the cheapest material being used, went up 100% in last month. And when you look at the development of iron ore, now it dropped actually at the end of July. But this is a strong signal that something is already going on, and it will be projected into, you know, the economy eventually, because these are the, you know, the initial parts of the whole economic chain, the people who are actually manufacturing something, and at the end you have the merchants selling you your AirPods or whatever. So we are going to see something interesting in a couple of months or years. So I'm kind of scared of that.
It also speaks to this focus on the velocity of money being somehow a very relevant metric, if not the most important metric to most people. It's the classic mistake that your Bcashers make, your big blockers make. It's focusing on money's utility, primarily being a medium of exchange, which is the most trivial use case for money. And they're 10 a penny, there's millions of them. It doesn't mean anything. And it's the noob response to, oh, I'm in Bitcoin. And they go, well, where can I spend it? And that's not the point. If your money's a good store of value, it's a vast pales into insignificance how useful it is as a medium of exchange, right? The store of value is the time-honored problem of humanity. Mediums of exchange are everywhere. So velocity is just it's kind of related to that, I would say. And my response is always, who cares? We can do medium of exchange as an afterthought. Like we'll experiment with Lightning and stuff like that. We'll figure it out.
You know, just to hammer down on this one point, because it's interesting, and I don't argue that only focusing on exchanging, it doesn't display the whole amount of what the money does. But in the Austrian tradition, and when money dies is written in there as well, Karl Menger describes money as the only defining characteristic is a medium of exchange, right? So that it is not a consumption good, meaning you don't eat it, right, and consume it, and it's not a production good, so you don't use it to build more consumption goods. And because it's neither a consumption good nor a production good, right, the only reason why you might want to hold it is as a medium of exchange. So to, in the future, buy a consumption or a production good. Right? And then the store of value aspect is just that aspect that you don't make that investment or consumption decision right now, but you postpone it into the uncertain future. Right? So the store of value aspect is inherently something with the that can only be done with a medium of exchange, so to say, at least roughly. Or in the Austrian tradition, the reasoning to talk about money always starts with a medium of exchange.
And it's and so you're basically trying to, like you're saying, push those decisions, that uncertainty into the future, so that you're preserving that medium of exchange and the amount of your time, labor, goods, services that you've exchanged for that medium, that certainty that you will be paid in kind, effectively.
Well, the certainty that because this specific good, the scarce resource, is the most liquid in the market, meaning that any entrepreneur on the market is willing to provide any good or any service for an adequate amount of that money in exchange, right? And if we have a large enough network effect, and if that can be reasonably assumed to be the case in the future, right, then Bitcoin becomes a useful store of value, because, you know, I don't need to make that investment decision now. I can wait to, in the future, talk with an entrepreneur to solve any problem that might come up.
It's interesting because we've got this dichotomy right now, where we're all, a lot of us are living in worlds where our paychecks are paid in the poor store of value, but the most commonly used medium of exchange. And we now have access to an excellent store of value, which would be a good medium of exchange if there weren't such bad money being freely taken and accepted everywhere. But it's in everybody's best interest to, now that those roles are temporarily segregated, to accept and hold the sound money, the store of value, and then to dump or pay with the medium, the most used medium of exchange, at least for the time being, until that that poor store of value ceases to become, or ceases to be a medium of exchange because people don't accept it anymore. Mimab, how about you? How are you feeling about anything that was said here in regards to, you know, I guess we started with you know, Weimar, velocity of money, but we kind of went down a rabbit hole of just general inflation in terms of what we've seen in the past, where we're at now. I don't know, any thoughts that you have on it?
I think I kind of agree with you, but you know, I think kind of like yeah, it's different, right? Kind of Weimar Republic, or like Zimbabwe, or wherever we are, right? Kind of, I think there's very edge cases on how inflation kind of goes. I think kind of like when it comes to the US or the Eurozone, kind of like inflation is still kind of okay. It's scary. It's getting to a point where it's getting scary, because kind of like it is higher than yeah, we kind of know. But I think kind of like it's still in a balance where it's okay, but okay-ish, right? Because kind of like a lot of the stuff, how we used to measure inflation and how we measuring it right now, it's kind of like it's very different. So
yeah, they change the metrics all the time, right?
They change the metrics all the time, just kind of to fit the narrative in the end of the day. But yeah, I haven't read the book kind of that you kind of like how money dies kind of that you kind of said. So it's like kind of I'm reluctant to kind of give a proper answer to that one because kind of I'm just not in the know or educated enough to for kind of saying that one. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, and it's yeah. I mean, it is interesting because comparatively to when it was happening in Weimar, you had currencies that, by contrast, were much more stable. You know, nowadays it's kind of a race to the bottom for everybody, and you also have the deflationary effects of technology, which are greatly reducing the costs of certain goods. And then you also have things like shrinkflation. You have ways of making products that are inferior in quality, and the especially when it comes to food, the push for substitutions of things that people would normally have consumed, a push for you know, people not to eat meat and everything. But if you, everybody knows, if you go out and you try to buy steak, it's more expensive. It's definitely more expensive right now. So yeah, I think part of it can be masked. It hasn't obviously reached Weimar levels, but yeah, it can be a slippery slope. So anyways, I guess I'll round out this topic. Thank you guys for your thoughts on it. By the way, I'm still working my way through the book, but I hope to have it finished in the next week or so. But let's move on to our next reason for being bullish, and I'm going to move down the line, and we'll toss it to Bitcoin Mechanic. So, dude, let people know, fill us in. What has you feeling bullish this week?
All right. So why am I bullish? We all know the adage, good times create weak men create hard times create strong men. And we're in that latter period there. I'm super happy about that. And this is the thing, I might rant a lot and seem pretty pissed off about the state of things at the moment and the authoritarianism that's going on. But in the end, I'm actually grateful for it. Just like I'm grateful when China bans Bitcoin mining, or when Mt. Gox collapses, or any of these things that prove to serve to prove how anti-fragile Bitcoin really is, and ultimately just strengthen Bitcoin. And I see the same thing happening with humanity at the moment, which is finally it's time to see who's actually got some grit and who's got some guts and who can stand up to what's going on. And it's great to see people getting up off the sofa, stop watching Netflix, and actually go out and fight and protest in the streets. And it warms my heart when I see the French and the Australians actually going for it and going, that's it, we're not going to stand for this anymore. This is too... But when I see it, I just know the fact that we reach for tools, right? And I believe strongly that the reason Australians are subjected to what they're subjected to and Texans aren't is specifically because of gun ownership. And guns are a tool of self-sovereignty. Bitcoin is another tool of self-sovereignty, and it's something people are going to be reaching for. And it exists. And people, when you put them under pressure like this, they show you what they're made of. And I'm glad that Bitcoin is there for them. And I know that they're going to use it because it's so perfectly designed to undermine the power of the state. And we haven't lived in, this is the most necessary time for a tool like that. And then to top it all off, to be more general about it, where I'm bullish, have you seen the alternatives? I mean, if they wanted to really undermine Bitcoin, rather than attack Bitcoin, which ultimately just helps us, or embrace it, which maybe does create some problems for us that are a little nuanced to understand. If they just stopped printing money and being generally ridiculous with the approaches they're taking to the economy, or, you know, allowed you to make large transfers using your bank again without having to prove what it is you're using the money for, or, you know, waiting days unnecessarily, all that stuff. If they stopped doing things like that, then maybe it would be harder to justify Bitcoin to people, but they just don't do it. They keep on being absolutely ridiculous with what they're doing. So that's fiat as an alternative. And what else do you have? Precious metals and shitcoins? Please, there's just nothing else out there. So Bitcoin is just absolutely, I mean, if you're not bullish on Bitcoin, I want to know where it went wrong. What's up with your perspective there? So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at.
I love that. That was an excellent rant, my friend. Yeah, and I echo that sentiment. It's this beautiful tool that tips the scales. And again, to tap onto another great book, Sovereign Individual, it changes the balance of the incentives behind violence. It's like a non-violent tool to basically undermine, like you said, everything that's wrong with the world or could be wrong with the world currently. It's a peaceful opt-out, and I'm so glad we have it. But I don't want to take up too much time on behalf of the rest of the panel. So does anybody else have thoughts on this topic, as Bitcoin is a tool of sovereignty and what we're seeing in the world right now?
I guess currently it's the only tool that we have to take this whole system apart. It's going to take years, but we may not succeed, but I would at least like to live and eventually die with the thought that I at least tried participate in it. So it just, there's no alternative, like you said. And any moment that somebody bans Bitcoin or whatever mining it you mentioned just makes it stronger. And you just stole my words with the anti-fragility. It's the thing. Like, people typically, you see very hysterical reactions in Twitter, like, oh, China did this and that. Who cares? It doesn't matter. I mean, if Bitcoin is going to fail because of something like this, it's good, it's going to do it now, then we would all stop wasting our time, right?
Yeah.
So exactly. The sooner it fails, the better.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
It hasn't died yet, so.
Yeah, I agree. And it not only, I'd go further. It's not that it doesn't matter if China ban mining, it's that it helps, because you're in a fragile state. If so much hashing is going on in China, that no one thinks that's a good thing or a sustainable situation. And then the minute they ban it, I'm like, finally, that's a relief. And the price tanks, goes down 50%. I'm like, none of the market seems to understand that this is a good thing. It's not just something Bitcoin can survive. It's actually really helpful when states attack Bitcoin. I mean, look at the liquidity on BISC. BISC should be the main way people buy and sell Bitcoin. They shouldn't have to subject themselves to KYC. And the only reason people do is because they're kind of lazy and want to use Bitcoin in convenient ways. But you have to uploading a picture of your passport and a recent utility bill to Coinbase or Binance or Gemini or any of these, that doesn't help Bitcoin really when people do that. And that's why the legality and the continued friendly relationship between Bitcoin and the state makes me uncomfortable. And I appreciate it when they make it illegal. And you get Nigeria, which is, we made Bitcoin illegal, the price shot up 30% immediately. All the peer-to-peer exchanges thrived. Everyone, like, they've got something like $2 or $3 billion has been slashed off the deficit. What do you call it? The market
remittances.
Yeah, exactly. So much money has suddenly just moved into Bitcoin, and even the Nigerian parliament or Senate, maybe, I don't remember exactly, were like, we just helped Bitcoin a lot when we made it illegal, so we should probably not do that anymore. So it's like occasionally they do figure it out, but what's weird to me is when Bitcoiners don't figure it out and they're saying, call your senator. And I'm like, what are you going to call your senator for? Like, you don't need friendly politicians for Bitcoin to survive. If you do, then I got news for you. They're not going to be friendly to it because, like, they don't like it. You know, they've figured out that it's an attack on the US dollar. It is. Like, they're not going to just be, you're not going to vote for Ron Paul and what's her name, Senator Lummis and all these people. That wouldn't even help if they did get into power. So it's a war. Let's fight the war. Let's fight head on in an adversarial capacity, in my opinion. Let's not pretend to play ball with them and accept regulatory capture. I think that does more harm than good.
Look, I think kind of like the interesting thing, kind of like just building up on what Mechanic kind of said, is kind of like we moving into a world where central bank digital currencies are a real thing, right? I live in a part of the world where, like, that's why I am leaving as well, this country right now that I'm in. Next year, a central bank digital currency will be the currency. So I am under complete financial surveillance if I want to stay in that country. So I don't know, and I can kind of like just look kind of like the States, Europe, Canada, wherever you are, everybody wants to build a central bank digital currency. So it's either kind of like either it's going to be Bitcoin and freedom, or we are going to live under a central bank controlled digital currency where, hey, you having the fifth beer in a pub, at the fifth beer is going to be taxed like 50% versus the first beer is going to be taxed at 10%. So we don't know where the future is going to lead, but it's a fucking scary future. So I don't know kind of like where that's going to lead and how they're going to abuse the powers, but they have the complete financial power, financial surveillance basically, into kind of like putting us into a state where it's kind of like 1984 looks like Disneyland essentially. It's kind of, it can be a lot worse. And I think kind of like that's something that we should really fight for. And I think that's why we Bitcoin.
I agree, man. I mean, we've got freedom of association, freedom of assembly, the freedom to protest, the freedom of speech. Given that it's all done online now over third parties, big data platforms, basically all of the freedoms that we need to enjoy to be prosperous have been eroded and destroyed. But the freedom to transact using something like cash, that still exists, and Bitcoin makes that persist. And that's huge. That's such a powerful thing, the freedom to actually exchange. Bitcoin maintaining that. With central bank digital currencies, that's gone. Central bank digital currencies are basically a fiat hard fork to clean up the technical debt left behind, where there's still these awkward things like cash that people can use, and people can still kind of slip under the radar and do a transaction that, the idea that you might walk into a store and buy some AA batteries without the government knowing about it keeps them awake at night. That fat guy from, the Bank of International Settlements, the one,
the final boss.
yeah, your bullet sponge, the final boss of the banking, the Robotnik of banks, I'm going to call him. Like, they can't handle it. They don't want us to have any of that. So, I mean, it's interesting to see what might happen, because they kind of need cash to exist so that, the bottom half of America can continue, like all the ghettos can continue drug dealing, and the whole prison complex can remain intact. Like, I don't know what they think is going to happen to all that with CBDCs. They're going to have to deliberately just allow lots of illegal activity to happen with it anyway. Otherwise, America is in for a complete collapse. But aside from that, just the fact that these CBDCs are coming around, like, I don't know. Like, I mean, what are we going to do with it? We know how bad it's going to be, right? No one doesn't. They can turn off flick a switch, and then suddenly you can't buy things anymore. You're done. Like, oh, I couldn't pay for my home insurance or my mortgage because I didn't get my 98th shot of Pfizer. So now I'm homeless. Literally, the bank owned my house, which, by the way, I mean, I was speaking to Guy Swan down at the Bitcoin Standard Conference, and he made the great point that when you borrow money to buy a house, the bank makes the money out of thin air, and then if you don't pay your mortgage, the bank gets your house. So the bank effectively made themselves a house out of nothing. They just they completely just printed a house for themselves, and it's such a scam. But anyway, I mean, that's the idea that this whole thing can just continue on the path has been going. Like, I mean, I don't have any hope for the world if we didn't have Bitcoin around. We need Bitcoin so much right now that can you really imagine what would happen with these? Like, CBDCs are the final straw. Like, that's it. They're going, that's it. Now you can't spend money either.
But you know what I think kind of is the scary thing is kind of like I know kind of like mechanic. I think you're based in the States or kind of North America and stuff like that. But in Asia, this is kind of like happening reality in literally 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening.
It's around the corner, man.
This is fucking scary fucking shit.
Yeah, but it shows you what you're made of, hey? Like, I'm grateful for it. Like, honestly, can you imagine a Bitcoin where Mt. Gox didn't collapse, Gavin Andresen didn't attack us, Roger Ver never, became the fallen angel he did? Can you imagine if Bitcoin didn't go through any of these events? Like,
that would be dreadfully boring.
It would be boring, and also, like when it has these events and survives them, really, like on some psychological level, you need to witness Bitcoin resisting these cataclysmic events to justify massive financial commitment. Because if Bitcoin didn't get if Bitcoin didn't undergo these things, it would be anti-fragile in theory, right? But you wouldn't really know or believe it. But I've seen Bitcoin withstand the most ruinous stuff and come out of it absolutely fine. Literally, the China ban being the like 60% of the global hash rate kicked out of one country has to scatter all around the world. We shrugged it off in minutes. And the fact that you can see that stuff makes you like, can you imagine anything else undergoing something like that? Like the ACH system, the banking system or network in America, that went down for a day, right? And that was probably because someone didn't show up for work that day or something utterly trivial. Like Bitcoin is just tough, man. And we've seen it win battles. So are you going to put millions of dollars in something that it's not just designed to be tough, but you've seen it actually win battles? Are you going to put millions of dollars in that? I think it would be harder to do.
On the other hand, we're just getting started, right? And I don't think that the serious attacks have actually been manifested yet.
What do you think a more serious attack looks like?
Well, central banks like printing even more money to buy Bitcoin and to try to get the entire supply. That's I think as custodianship of Bitcoin centralizes and as therefore also full nodes who running merchants verifying their transactions reduces, then the rules of Bitcoin are no longer secure.
Well, we're kind of close to that. Hey, you've got Kentucky subsidizing Bitcoin mining, which is kind of a way of the state buying Bitcoin with its own printed money. It's like you're about one hop away from that being a reality already, I think.
Oh, and this is actually super interesting on the macro politics, because if any government subsidizes one miner, that is effectively a tax on all other miners, right? Because miners is about being marginally more profitable than the other guy, right? So if someone else supports your competition, then you actually earn less. Right, so that's a tax. And this way, local governments subsidizing their local miners can actually tax international miner or mines in general.
Yeah, I agree. It's another attack. And it's why Michael Saylor's Bitcoin Mining Council is very, very misguided. And it's another example of why when you do something that looks like on the surface it might help Bitcoin, it just creates problems.
Can we ask Jan to that question, because I guess he's kind of like the guru of mining basically here.
You mean bribing the miners? Well, I think it's actually good, because again, it proves that the thing is anti-fragile. You can break it. So if you try doing that, then we'll see the effects in the network. Well, at some point, the bribing, or you can call it subsidizing or whatever, but I mean, I think white paper mentions it as a bribing. It would have to be executed at massive scale. But what Mechanic mentioned about somebody didn't show up at work, I think of this like anytime I do a transaction after 5 p.m. I'll be like, fuck, this is not gonna go through until next 2 days. And like it is so ridiculous. Well, we typically buy testing machines for mining, because we do the firmware in China, and like you find the machines and you just click and you paid for them in 5 seconds. I mean, we don't do Lightning, these are like big amounts, but it just happens. If I was to push this amount of money, a couple $1,000s for one machine roughly, through a banking system, I would get questioned like, why am I buying it? Is it legal to buy it? And in a week, maybe the money arrives, and at that time, I either don't have the goods or the price has changed already. So, I mean, like anytime I touch the online banking and it's Friday, well, then I'm like, okay, I have to wait like 2 days. And the most laughable part is when they have maintenance. There's no maintenance for Bitcoin. Like, how can a bank have a maintenance? I just want to transfer like anytime I want. They should have their systems like available and deploying them like in real time. Continuous deployment, it's called. And I mean, there's nothing like this in Bitcoin. So yeah, I think the problem that we are seeing is that it's not just the governments, but banks as private entities are actually scared of this, because kind of like renders them obsolete unless they will join the system. So bramming is good. Let's keep doing that.
That's
I've got
interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I was gonna. So, in regards to the mining council, like, okay, so you know, I know that we're definitely not big on councils or what was the Bitcoin Foundation or whatever the hell it was back in the day with the Brock, but if okay, so this mining council, their whole thing is basically like ESG, trying to reduce emissions, all that kind of stuff. If they're not mining in the most efficient way possible, aren't they effectively just like self-taxing? They're giving up market share because they're effectively taking a hit by choosing not to mine in the most efficient way possible, which gives up you know, limited Bitcoin that will be mined. And if somebody's able to mine it more efficiently, then like are they shooting themselves in the foot is what I'm getting at. And will it be enough of a shot for them to bleed out? I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah, and I want to hear you on this, man.
Well, we had these discussions about the price of capital that's being put into Bitcoin. And it's kind of problematic in a way that sometimes you can create an incentive for a party to actually build a Bitcoin mine that when you look at it from just pure Bitcoin mining perspective, is not efficient in terms of the amount of hours it's operating, you know, different grid balancing programs and so on. But when you look at the whole project as a grid program, it turns out to be profitable. So the question is what you want. And I would be okay with this setup if there was not this subsidizing part of you know, making the capital actually cheap. If it was a fair competition where you would have some super knowledge where to get this cheap capital in a legal way, I mean, not stealing or whatever, then it's fine. But I mean, this is a little bit, you know, twisting the market conditions between the miners. But at the same time, I just still think it's a good thing because it's going to prove that eventually it should fail.
Yeah,
I mean, you cannot print the money indefinitely and keep like subsidizing different projects, making the, you know, the capital availability super cheap, you know. So I don't know. I mean, when you look at it, like when you focus just on this simple fact, it just makes people pissed off because it is not the right thing to do. But if you look at larger scale, it just doesn't scale. It just works locally for some countries, some governments, some local, you know, counties and so on, but it doesn't scale. And at some point you would be like massively bleeding by printing so much money that the inflation would just collapse everything. Because you cannot build the mining operation out of thin air. It's not just the miners. I mean, you know, you need to source a lot of different things, hardware, build outs, you know, electricity and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's gonna sort itself out eventually, but it just needs some time.
So how's this play out then? Okay, so let's say this mining council goes forward, whoever's part of it, they say, hey, we're mining green. They then get subsidies from the government to do so, meaning that they are now at least at par, maybe more profitable than miners that are just going about it through like typical, you know, in other parts of the world where they just have to use the most efficient means. So you're rewarding less efficient miners, but that can only go so far, so as to the point where the fiat that's being printed to subsidize said miners is no longer worth the subsidy that was originally being given. And so what, the end game is the collapse of fiat then solves the problem, or like what's the end game?
I really like that.
I mean, I would say it is difficult to execute something like this in scale. And when you look at it just locally, it doesn't have the big impact. I mean, you can be pissed off as a miner on, in the other part of the world where you don't have such opportunity. But if you add all these things together, you would see it's just a fraction of the whole Bitcoin network. So it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I'd agree also with your point. I do agree that given that it's an attack vector, the mining council, that it's ultimately good for Bitcoin. I do agree with that, of course. The reason I sort of I trip up on it is because people like Michael Saylor, who are just fantastic champions for Bitcoin, see it as a good thing. And I'm like, whoa, that's like, it's okay if you like it. Ultimately, I'd like to see a scenario where these sort of unworkable, massive KYC AML mining pools that aren't the kind of weak spots, really. Let's be honest. Like the mining to be strong has everyone with one ASIC in their house, like heating their water tank, maybe, or something. But even that is an economic externality we maybe don't want. Like everyone mining at home is great and it's hard to shut down, but running a miner is harder than running a node, right? Like running a node, you can basically do silently over Tor, but running a miner, it's a bit like growing cannabis illegally, right? You got to deal with lots of consumption of electricity and lots of heat output, and it can be kind of hard to hide it. So that's one area that's just more obvious to attack, right? So I'm sure we can survive it, and I would like the attack to come in the form of this, like, this Greek gift of, we're going to demonstrate to Tesla that we're mining with clean energy again. Yay! Elon will invest again. He will start, accepting Bitcoin for Teslas and all these things. Great, but like, let's be honest. First off, I agree with Francis Pulio. The correct response to the ESG people is cry harder. Like, it's my money. I'm going to use the electricity for what I want. I'm going to mine whether you like it or not. It's not, oh, look at us, we're so green and carbon neutral, and please give us, a subsidy or something like that. But I love the scenario you're talking about where they subsidize miners that are playing ball with the regulators, and we get Mara pool kind of ridiculousness where they start censoring coin join transactions or Iranian addresses or any of that stuff. I love it that they subsidize it with money that eventually just becomes worthless. So that seems hilarious to me. But I'd like to see the attack. I genuinely would. I just want people in the community to understand and see it for what it is. It's an attack. It's not people trying to help Bitcoin. It needs to be viewed for what it is. And I'm sure Bitcoin will survive it. But it's weird to me when so many Bitcoiners are like, they see things that look like attacks as things that need to be stopped and that Bitcoin can't survive, and things that look like help as being actually helpful. And I'm like, well, it's kind of upside down. Like, that flow chart, is this good for Bitcoin? No, this is good for Bitcoin. Is this good for Bitcoin? Yes, then this is good for Bitcoin. I think that's got one part wrong in it. I think if it's good for Bitcoin, it isn't. And if it isn't good for Bitcoin, it is. I think that's generally how I see it. But ultimately, they both go down another layer to everything is good for Bitcoin. I agree. But the point is, when we're helped and people are in, I don't know, I'm going off on too much of a tangent here. I apologize. But I'm saying the current situation is so untenable in many ways. But I would like for the community to see it as an attack when this mining council thing gets going, and governments start going, okay, there's good miners, we like them, they're using over X% of renewable energy, so they get a tax break or something like that, and it's all voluntary until it isn't. I would like people to just look at that as an attack rather than as a means of convincing short-term people that are blocked by their shareholders from becoming orange pilled because of concerns about energy and stuff like that.
I 100% agree with you, because kind of like, what, in the end of the day, it's kind of like there's so much kind of like shit that we're wasting energy on. It's like kind of Christmas lights or your little garden lights that you kind of have running in the evening for no fucking reason because you're not going out, but they look kind of fucking nice. It's like there's so much energy wastage, and I don't even think kind of energy wastage is kind of like as a problem, right? because kind of like what is human society is kind of like you wouldn't thrive without energy in the end of the day. I think it's a very hypocritical argument.
Yeah, it's super dark to say to humans, like, you must justify your intention with this energy you're going to consume to an
Exactly.
authority. That is insane. Like, it doesn't, I'm going to consume you're the power plant. I'm the consumer. I'm going to buy the electricity. You're going to sell it to me. I'm not going to, it's just another form of authoritarian ridiculousness for me to say, oh, the thing I'm using it for is this. And we all saw that, was it the Alienware computer that can't be sold to people that live in California or Oregon or Hawaii or something like that? They're like, because it uses too much electricity.
Oh my god, yeah, I remember that one. That's
like,
fucking ridiculous.
Dude, I'm gonna use, like, it comes down to the very, like, your ability to consume. It's like, where do you logically stop? Philosophically, let's get ridiculous. You're breathing in and consuming oxygen and turning into carbon dioxide. Is it justified? Is your use of that oxygen justified? We want a written form, a signed thing every hour justifying your consumption of this oxygen. It's philosophically the same thing, right? Like, you get to consume stuff in your environment. Like,
I saw you went for a run today. Pretty inconsiderate of the environment, man.
yeah,
How
exactly.
dare you?
You should feel bad.
Spoil the oceans.
I love this topic, guys. Let's wrap it where it's at. More. I love your sentiment. More attacks, better in the end. Honestly, we need to see how resilient this thing is and get it out of the way. I hope that, and I'm confident that it will survive. These things are always scary while they're happening, but in the end, it makes us all better. And Bitcoin tends to find a way, and Bitcoiners tend to find a way. So, very bullish point. Let's keep it rolling. Meme Hub, I'm gonna defer to you, and I'm gonna let you take us on our next little tangent here. What has you bullish this week? Take it away.
I think it's not just this week, but it's kind of like, I think in general, I think kind of what me really bullish is the Lightning Network in general, kind of in the exponential growth that we're seeing kind of right now. We have like more than 2.3K Bitcoin kind of like locked up in Lightning channels. We've close to 14,000 nodes. And especially kind of like 75% of these nodes are running through Tor, which is fucking awesome, right? Kind of like there's a lot of privacy and so on that's kind of happening. And what I kind of just think, kind of like it is just kind of mind blowing. It's like I'm learning by the day, all of the different services and so on. It's going to like, I think there's a lot more to Lightning than kind of just kind of like it's being a transaction layer. In the beginning, kind of like, I don't know, like kind of the Lightning Torch, the toddler node, kind of good buddy, kind of brought to life for us. So like, oh, okay, it's a cheap way to transact. But right now, by the day, I'm kind of learning more, and it's so much more than just the transactional layer. It's kind of like it's kind of like mind blowing on what are people building on it. It's kind of like there's a few examples like Swinset, which I think it's pretty immature still, but it shows you like what the future can hold, right? It's kind of it's messaging basically built on Lightning, or podcast, and you're streaming sets by the minute or anything else. It's kind of like stuff like there's a very interesting company, and I'm really still uneducated about it. It's like kind of Impervious AI. They kind of build a bunch of like kind of like APIs that you can kind of plug into, where they started their own VPN service, right? So kind of like two nodes can interact. And it's like I actually don't need NordVPN or Astral anymore or anything else. I can kind of like do my own VPN through Lightning, or kind of like I can do phone calls. It's like one node can kind of act as a phone number to another node. Just like kind of like it's just fucking mind-blowing. It's like I'm learning so much right now on this kind of stuff, on what's kind of happening on kind of like I would almost call layer 3, right? Kind of on what can be built on Lightning. I think it's just fucking amazing. And then just kind of with Lightning as well, there's so many services that are never kind of thought about. It's kind of like There's a site called stackwork.com.org. I'm not sure what I forgot. Anyway, but it's kind of like, it's mind blowing, right? This site is kind of basically the micro task site, and I got a bunch of kids. Anyway, my oldest one, basically kind of like, he wanted to have a Lego Star Wars kit, and I discovered that was kind of like probably 1.5 years ago. I discovered the site Stackwork, and it's kind of like, okay, you earn yourself the sats. That kind of site is basically is doing little micro tasks, it's kind of stuff that AI is too stupid to do. So like kind of like, oh, looking at the nutrition label and kind of like saying like, okay, what's the sugar content of this nutrition label? So this site is all about little micro tasks, and I literally have my son kind of like, he can kind of read. He's just like, he's just coming to school right now, but he could read before. I got a tiger mom, so he could kind of like read and stuff like that before he kind of goes to school. But it's like, sugar, okay, look at the label and type in 6 grams of sugar and anything else. So he earned actually sats on that site. I think it's called Stackwork. It's like, it's fucking phenomenal. So he actually earned his whole entire Lego kit. Of course, we didn't sell the sats. It's like, I kept the sats for him, paid that one. But he was kind of literally kind of on that site every single fucking day to earn money, which is fucking phenomenal. And kind of like, if you think about it, kind of like within about 10 days, he earned enough. I forgot how much the Lego kit was. It was like probably like $20 or something like that. It's like 10 days, 15 days or something like that. We kind of just used an iPad and did little micro tasks on earning that money. And now think about it like that, right? Kind of like, there's so many communities around the world where earning $1, $2, $3 a world a day, it's a huge fucking salary. It's I think kind of it's fucking mind-blowing what Lightning can do, and kind of like the way of financial inclusion it can bring to the world beyond just kind of like a sheer means of payment, right? Kind of like you can reward people for tiny little tasks, and that's why I'm really, really bullish on Bitcoin, not just this week, but just in general. I think kind of like the opportunities with Lightning are just kind of like fucking mind-blowing to me.
I love that you brought this up. I literally just did a video on all of the extra stuff that's being built in and around Lightning, just like this past week. And I was looking at Impervious and what's kind of being done around there. I read about the red phone thing that you're talking about, doing an encrypted peer-to-peer call via Lightning Network that nobody.
Big shout out to Pseudo Sach, by the way. Like,
yeah,
he's behind that one. Very good play.
Yeah, it's cool because again, like it's an instance where nobody would even know that call took place. There's another guy that he basically sent a file through Lightning Network using AMP. So it basically took the file, split it into a whole bunch of little pieces, used Lightning routes to get to coalesce
packages and things.
Yeah, and it was and if all the pieces don't make it there because they can't find routes, then you won't end up having to pay. So there's like a condition there where only if all of them get there. There's so many cool things that I didn't realize were possible on Lightning, and again, it's still like testing and people are dicking around with it, but it kind of takes those shitcoin narratives and it flies in the face of like, oh, we need an alternative blockchain and token in order to accomplish this. We need a separate currency. You don't. You just need layers. And if it's a good idea, it'll be used on top of Bitcoin. If it's a bad idea, well, you never needed a blockchain, let alone anything in the first place. So though all of the use cases that are actually needed, you don't need a new currency for them. You can just do it on top of Bitcoin, and it's fantastic. But
bingo.
Yeah, I'll ask anybody else in the panel. What's your experience with Lightning? Have you seen anything interesting with it? What do you see as value there?
Lightning is obviously the best smart contracting platform out there, designed and engineered for Bitcoin micropayments, and also get out of here with all that ETH shit and NFT nonsense. This is where the real sovereignty is at. No, and it's amazing. And I remember a couple of years ago where it was still more than reckless to even think about doing this on mainnet. And nowadays we really see these massive ventures like Podcasting 2.0 with now I believe it's over 1,000 podcasts actually having their Lightning node hooked up in the value field of their podcast and getting sats every single minute that users are listening. Hopefully you too, BTC Sessions. I'm not sure. You are?
Oh yeah, yeah, I'm on
there. Of
there.
course, boost. Smash that boost right there.
Yeah. If you're on Breeze Wallet, it's in there, and I think I haven't. Sphinx Chat for Android is not as smooth as I've heard it is on iPhone, but yeah, I have my node hooked up, and I can go in and I can see like streams of like 8 sats, 9 sats here and there from every minute people want. It's just cool to see. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love it too, and. This is, as I said, I work for Start9. They're a node project, but more than that, they were originally conceived just because Keegan and Matt Hill, two of the main guys from it, founders, were trying to set up a Lightning node, and we're like, this is too difficult to do. Like, this has taken us a few days to do it, and we're devs. So it shouldn't be this difficult for people to do. So they went and did something that looks a little reminiscent of all the other projects people love, like Umbrel and MyNode and Raspberry Blitz. But then they went way further and decided to make a bunch of other apps as well. So you have Sphinx on Embassy OS as well. I haven't used Sphinx for ages because I run Graphene instead of Android, and as you just said, it's pretty buggy on Android anyway. But when it comes to using Graphene instead, then it just becomes unusable from what I've seen. So yes, as Max said, it was reckless, beyond reckless. I originally used Lightning for the first time in January 2018. During my first excursion to Canada, to West Coast Canada, and I remember sitting in Tofino, which is this beautiful, it's Canada's Hawaii, basically. And it was January, so it was very cold and stormy.
Very cold Hawaii.
Yeah, I spun up an Ubuntu VM and got Lightning running and managed to buy some stickers from Blockstream and something like that. And it was a lot of fun. I lost the sats that I didn't spend. I have no idea what happened to them. Probably 100,000 sats or something like that, that will be worth enough to buy me 10 houses in about a month. But so maybe that's a little optimistic, but yeah, Lightning has, and it's been fun. Like, it's been fun watching all the detractors attack it and be wrong. And they still call it vaporware. They still make all these false claims about it. Like, oh, you're never going to be able to onboard everyone onto Lightning because you'll need to do one transaction per person in the world. Like, just not understanding things like batching or, submarine swaps or any of the other tech that's advanced. Its detractors look more and more foolish. Like, I went around 3 or 4 months ago, I went back in r/BTC, which is Roger Vere's forum for attacking Bitcoin, and all of it was fun to do. I used to spend all of 2016 and 2017 arguing with people in these forums, but I'd kind of forgotten about it for a few years, and I went back in there, and it was funny to see all those old narratives again, like, lol, Lightning's going to be ready in 2 years, like TM, with the 2 weeks trademark and all that stuff. It's vaporware. And I was like, what are you talking about? I use this like all day, every day now. I use Lightning a lot. Like, it works, guys. There's like loads of wallets out there. And then move on to Moon Wallet, and you don't even have to be technically aware of what's going on in Lightning in the first place. You just accept Bitcoin and it's automatically in a Lightning channel in the first place, right? BTC Sessions did a guide on how to use Moon Wallet, I think. So yeah, check that out. Lightning's great. It doesn't solve every problem, and it's not the only layer 2 thing that Bitcoin has. And it's also chain agnostic too, right? So you can have Lightning on anything else as well if you want it. So it's not technically strictly a Bitcoin only project, but let's be honest, all of the Lightning devs, their requirement for contributing at least to LND is you got to understand Bitcoin. They're not like, oh, and you also need a firm understanding of, BSV or ETH or one of these shit coins. So I think it's an exciting and good project. It's definitely a reason to be bullish. It's incredibly cool software, but as we all would say, it's early on, it's experimental. Be careful with what you do in Lightning, but at the same time, that's kind of all right, because no one would ever tell you to send tens of thousands of dollars using Lightning anyway. It's not really designed for that. It is designed for small, very rapid payments. It's not designed for big final settlement stuff. And now, just to finish up, now is a good time to open channels on the Lightning Network. If you want to get something like an Embassy OS or something far more custom than that, because you'll want to be online all the time with Lightning. That's one thing to remember. If you want to do something like that, the blocks are basically empty at the moment. Not empty, but there's a lot of space in the blocks. So it's a good time to open channels and play around. And there's always testnet as well if you really don't want to use any sats. So yeah, that's my piece.
But testing things on mainnet makes mistakes very memorable.
Can confirm. Jan, what's your experience with Lightning? Have you dove in a lot?
I did actually back in 2017, that was still before Lightning being officially usable on mainnet. I did a presentation in Paralelnipolis, which is a place where the Bitcoiners used to get together and still get together in Prague. And I was demonstrating really live a Lightning running over, I think, a Litecoin and Bitcoin testnets, and did a transaction on there. And by that time, I actually deeply studied all the mechanics, and what just made me super exciting is that when you look at the mechanics of the crypto behind it, essentially it's the thing that it's trustless is. I mean, when you look at it, it's super simple in a way. Once you understand it, then you would be, wow, this is a great idea. And you would be wondering why this hasn't come much earlier, but things evolve. So that was back then. And I've been following it ever since then. Now I'm super excited that we have finally Schnorr in place. So that's going to make a few things a little bit more smooth within the Lightning Network. So I think this is the layer that the smart contracts are going to be running on. I mean, I can't think of anything else. In terms of practice, I mean, we as a pool we don't have a really good business case. But I think a year ago, when there was the Lightning Torch going, that experiment, we were one of the ones holding the torch at like $200. So that Bitcoin worth that needed to be transferred with the next step was like $200. And that was already a little difficult, but we managed, and it was really exciting. So this is my experience. I mean, if there is anything that people call a DeFi, this is going to be the place where it's going to be happening.
That's right.
Jan, can I ask you a question? What do you think, kind of as a mining pool? What do you think about kind of Lightning? Because kind of I can see kind of like it's probably kind of like it might be right now kind of like most of the stuff is kind of like on-chain fees and so on. So if Lightning kind of like really develops in.
Oh, you mean if it's like threatening the miners in a way that it's like, taking
No,
away the fees?
I don't think it will ever threaten the miners, because kind of like in the end of the day, Lightning
you need to do the settlement eventually, right?
Yeah, exactly.
At some point.
What's your whole take on kind of Lightning and kind of like how it competes with kind of the fee market and stuff like that?
Looking at the blockchain lately, I mean, you guys all have seen the transaction fees, so they have been going down, but we still have a pretty significant block subsidy, right? So even though bigger fees would be a nice incentive for the miners, I think the exchange rate currently is the incentive, and the gap between the exchange rate and the difficulty is the incentive for the miners to join, this mining game. So I don't think miners are really concerned about this. I mean, I wouldn't be. And once it starts evolving, the question is, what would be the exchange rate of Bitcoin at that time, and what would be the difficulty? And again, when you look at the Bitcoin network, it is very exciting to observe how it balances itself out. So I'm not worried. If the exchange rate is too low, we have seen miner capitalization they just went offline. Sorry, I can't pronounce it.
Mm.
Back then, when the exchange rate was like 3K, but by that time the S9s were being sold for like $50 a piece, and those who planned for this are made some good bucks after that. So it's a very interesting economical game, and I think, in fact, for me, it's the most exciting computer game ever. Like watching all these, forces, economical things that are, pushing the whole vehicle further. So
Yeah, I think by the time that it's the majority of subsidy is just from fees, the cost of a single sat, like the fiat equivalent will by that time hopefully more than make up for worrying about whether or not blocks are full. I think by that time there'll be, if Bitcoin is to succeed, then there'll be constant demand for that block space, regardless of Lightning Network, because again, you're going to have a lot of people on the globe trying to interact, trying to have funds on Lightning. You'll have batch transactions opening and closing and setting up channels. I just saw the newest thing, or not the newest thing, but where you can, well, there's a couple things. You can direct open a channel from your hard wallet, as in send out of your hard wallet to fund a channel. It's no longer in cold storage from there, but like as in that transaction lands in an address that would then be online and accessible. And then the other thing was joint, I can't remember the name for it, but joint channel creation, where you're creating a channel with somebody.
Oh, you mean AMP? Like
No, joint channel creation is dual funding.
Dual funding. Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Yes. Yeah.
And you can do a nice trick with splicing as well, but that's a bit different. Dual funding basically means that two peers provide sats in the opening transaction to the same channel. Right? So two peers create one channel and each of them put some sats on the table inside that channel.
So on both ends of the balance.
So
Exactly.
yeah, let's can we break down how that would work? Because okay, so I have Bitcoin in my wallet, you have Bitcoin in your wallet, sitting in an address. We want to contribute to the channel. The channel would have, it's basically a 2 of 2 multi-sig, correct? And so what's the technicals of what's happening behind the scenes there?
Yes. So this is a 2 of 2 multi-sig, meaning you alone can no longer spend that money. And so the idea of the Lightning Network is that before you even send money into that 2 of 2 multi-sig channel, you ask your peer to create a pre-signed spending transaction that spends the money out of this coin or out of this address back into your own single sig wallet. Right? So the multi-sig wallet gets spent even before it gets created. Right? But and that means that it gets, by default, if only Alice provides sats into the channel, then 100% of the channel balance go back to Alice, to her single public key, before she even signs that first funding transaction. And here in that funding transaction, only Alice has coins in the input. Right? So that's the regular Lightning channel opening as we know it as of now. Then with splicing, with dual funding, we have a coin join happening, right? So this funding transactions has 2 coins from multiple users, both Alice and Bob, right? And therefore, they will only want to sign this transaction that spends both of their coins, if they have everything checked out, if they have everything else verified, mainly that both of them get the money back, right? So when having before signing the first coin join transaction to open the channel, we pre-sign transactions spending out of that multi-sig channel back into the single sig wallets of Alice and Bob with the amount of sats that they respectively have. And then only after this refund transaction is signed, first Alice signs the opening transaction, and then Bob signs it. Both people need to sign it because it is a coin join.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, because yeah, the typical, like you were saying, just to reiterate, let me know if I get anything wrong here. But basically, typically in a Lightning channel, you open it, a single person contributes Sats to the channel. The pre-signed transaction would basically guarantee that they get back their Sats as they are spending on that Lightning channel and pushing coins to the other side of a channel. It's basically a pre-signed transaction where if they were to close out that channel at that moment, the amount that they've spent are no longer in their control, and it would settle back to their wallet and the other person's wallet, where they would have on-chain transactions going back to them. In this instance, you're still doing the same thing, but you're able to have two basically, yeah, you're right, a coin join or two signatories sending coins to the same address at the same time, with that pre-signed transaction, not just pre-signing it to one individual, but to both, for their respective amount of initial Sats that they contributed.
Exactly. And one additional small nuance is that the input amount of both users is likely going to be higher than the channel capacity or the channel balance that they want to have on their side. Right. So let's say Alice has a 1 Bitcoin input or UTXO, but she only wants to open a channel worth 0.1 Bitcoin. Right. And Bob has a 5 Bitcoin UTXO, but he also only wants to put 0.2 Bitcoin into there. Right? And here, of course, then in this opening transaction, we generate one output, which is that multi-sig Lightning channel. And then there would be two change outputs that are all single sig for either Alice and Bob, with the 0.9 and 1.8 Bitcoin and change that they get back. Right? But because these change amounts are on a single sig addresses and no longer multi-sig addresses, we don't need to worry about all of the pre-signed magic of Lightning. Well, because that's just your keys, your Bitcoin.
I like it. Oh, we got deep on that one. Awesome. I enjoy that. Sweet. Okay. I love the Lightning chat, but I do have to, I'm conscious of time. I know I'm keeping you guys longer than planned, but we're going to keep it rolling. Mima, thank you for bringing up Lightning. I'm so bullish on Lightning and I love it. And I encourage everybody to dabble and learn and test out wallets and see what's up, because it's a lot of fun to play with if you haven't tried already. Max, you are up. Dude, please let us know, what has you feeling bullish this week?
Oh, this week specifically, it was Bolt 12. To stay with the Lightning Network, that's the next generation payment negotiation UX flow. And it's really magical and super useful. So far, a Lightning Network invoice, Bolt 11, is a one-time payment secret, basically. And it's the string that you should only use once to request a payment. That make things a bit awkward. Main thing is that you cannot get a tattoo of your Lightning invoice, because that would be a very short-lived fun. And that we got to solve, of course, right? There are current nice hacks around this, mainly LN-URL, which is kind of a separate server that you need to set up. And that then, you have a small domain link, btcsessions.com/payme. And all of a sudden you can toss Ben some sats, right? That's possible with this add-on service. But what Bolt 12 is doing now is to do kind of a similar thing, but inside the Lightning Network directly, running completely inside your Lightning node and communicating only inside the Lightning Network. So you don't need to have a separate server. You don't need to run any separate software. You don't need to have a domain. All of these things are taken care of. It's all just Lightning pub keys at that point. And the cool things that you can do is static invoices or the static offers, right? So you actually can get a tattoo right on your forehead that people can scan all the time and continue sending you one sat as you deserve, obviously, for that heroic act. But it also allows for automatic recurring payments, right? So you can say, hey, scan this QR code and you will pay me, forever one sat every minute. That's great. And there's also nice messaging involved here directly, right? So sender and merchant can communicate and send messages back and forth about details of the payment, which is fascinating as well. And because there is some difference between the time where this offer was created and you print the QR code. And when then someone actually pays the QR code, you can also do, for example, some trickery with the exchange rates. Right? You can print a QR code with an offer that says, pay me $5, in dollars. And a week later, of course, the SAT price is much different as the shitcoin continues to hyperinflate. Right, so you're gonna get less shitcoins for those 5 Bitcoin. Sorry, you get less sats for those 5 shitcoins, exactly. Right, and this can also be negotiated again at the time where you actually make that payment. Right, so small things like this that really show in hindsight how bad Lightning was and how much of a hack it was in the beginning, and it's a miracle that it actually worked. But now that we have over 4 years under our belt of actually implementing this craziness, we've learned a thing or two, and that is all kind of cohesively packaged under Bolt 12 Lightning offers by Rusty Russell. So bolt12.org as a really useful resource that shows you all the fabulous things. It's still very early, so far only implemented by C Lightning, and one other full Lightning node implementation will need to implement it before it's considered no longer a draft in the spec. But I'm bullish as fuck, especially as a podcaster and content creator. I've been showing Bitcoin on-chain QR codes on YouTube videos for way too long, and Lightning made that terribly worse because every QR code that you show, only the first listener can pay it and nobody else can. Right, so getting Lightning back to the beautiful days of sending sats for watching cat videos on YouTube, which obviously is the highest achievement of humankind in this regard, we're on a good path. So that makes me even more bullish.
That's the main use case of Bitcoin, in my opinion. Cat videos. Yeah, I love that these developments are happening. Again, it's just another example of everybody, the naysayers being proven wrong in that it's working. Yes, it was a workaround. It was rough around the edges, and it still is. It's still early, but the amount of I think people look at a single point in time, like we were talking talking previously about RBTC going there and seeing people saying that Lightning is vaporware, right? Because they looked at it when it was not yet in production, when it was not yet on mainnet, and they just see that picture in their mind as that's constantly what is happening. And people just have no concept that things are developing so quickly now, and it's going to be like you snap your fingers, or at least it will seem like that to people that are on the outside looking in, and one day they'll be like, oh, holy shit, this all actually works quickly, because they'll just download an app and it will just work. But to those of us that have been tinkering with this stuff for a while, you see the progress, and it is moving quickly, but you know that there's work being put into it, and it is, you live through all of that. So I don't know, again, if people want to tag in here to what Max said around the static QR codes and some of the cool things that you can program in there and versus your current experiences of Lightning. Meme Hub, what are you using right now for a wallet, by the way, for Lightning?
A bunch of different wallets, basically. But yeah, I'm not really spending Bitcoin, so, but yeah.
Which wallet are you using to earn for all your memes? Is the question. Yeah. You got to earn the sats.
Yeah, how are you stacking those sats?
I use Blue in a way, yeah, which is kind of like, yeah, I know it's kind of like it's a custodial Lightning wallet, but yeah.
I really like that there's a few that I've found are staying right on top of kind of some of the newer, and I'm talking about like mobile wallets that people can just use. But it seems to be that Breeze and Phoenix are both pretty on top of things in terms of, okay, something new comes down the pipeline and they're relatively quick to implement it. Moon has been doing a pretty good job in terms of just like the unified balance and then implementing newer things. Although I would like to see them, they've kind of like half implemented LNURL. I'd like to see that like fully implemented, because there's certain things that it doesn't quite understand what you're trying to do. But yeah, man, Bolt 12. Very excited to just have a static. It makes the user experience so much easier to just be like, yeah, here's this is my Lightning wallet, instead of actively being like, okay, I got to make an invoice for you, I got to do all this. It's so much easier.
I fully agree with you, Ben. And I think kind of like that's kind of like it has been a really big issue with Lightning in general. Kind of like there's not a static QR code. Kind of like that the QR code is always changing in a way, right? Kind of like I think that has been a huge issue in Lightning in general. I'm based in a country where I don't have a wallet anymore, right? I'm using a centralized service and my mobile phone to pay for fucking everything. But I'm not kind of like I actually don't have a wallet anymore since 3-4 years. I'm just like literally kind of like paying everything with my mobile phone. However, it's centralized, right? But yeah, I think it's really important, kind of like, especially if you want to accept payments and stuff like that, unless we can kind of like sort it out somehow. Or even if you, if a podcaster, right, kind of like you just kind of like want to put up a QR code and say like kind of like donate to the pod or whatever it is, it's like kind of like if there's not a centralized form of payment, so centralized is the wrong word for it, right? Kind of like there's a static QR code.
No, but you are right though, because currently, like at the end of my videos, I stick up like a link to my Strike page, right? Which Strike is awesome. It's super easy for people to utilize that, but you know, it is what it is. It's a centralized service, or like I was previously using tippin.me, and people can like drop some sats there, but it falls short of the potential of just going directly into your wallet. It goes through a service that then sees who you are and what you've got, and then you have to pull it out into your own custody. So there's that hop where it hits somebody else's custody for that brief moment in time, and to eliminate that in the long term is a fantastic thing. I think it's great.
100%. You know what? Actually, kind of like what were there's the kind of like it's a new find. I kind of just found it 2-3 days ago. Actually, you can do kind of pretty cool designs with QR codes as well. So I think kind of like I think it's just cosmetical, but you can kind of do or design really awesome looking QR codes. I think kind of like.
I gotta get what's his name? Is it World of Rusty? Maybe he can design.
Oh yeah.
He's awesome. He does.
Rusty's fucking. He's a fucking legend. I fucking love him. He's a great guy as well.
He did Mechanics Crown there. He did. He's done a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, of course. You can tell the art stuff. So he did a bunch of Mike the Sailor stuff, and of course Tone stuff.
Yeah,
that's how I got to know him, and kind of like Rusty. He has a very distinct software. But no, that's not the point. It's like kind of like you can kind of like actually kind of like I'd love to send it to you in the DMs. Like there's some really interesting things about a QR code, because actually kind of like you only need to like how all our mobile phones kind of read a QR code is actually only a third of the QR code needs to be visible. This is very interesting. So you can kind of like design the shit out of it. So you could kind of have really, really interesting QR codes that look fucking crazy.
You know, but also
still work.
Moving QR codes and flashing QR codes, right?
Exactly.
So that in a couple seconds, the screen shows hundreds of QR codes, and you just hold the phone for a second or two, and it scans through all of them. Large files can be transferred with that, and that's actually very useful for Bitcoin multi-signatures, especially in a pre-Taproot world, right, where you transfer a lot of data, and it gets more and more and more with every signature. Very useful to have that. I think a couple wallets have that implemented. I'm
Yeah,
not sure which ones.
there are, yeah. So like if you're using something like Keystone or Foundation Passport, or even I think in some instances like the Blue Wallet built-in multi-sig, they have the animated QR code where basically, yeah, it'll flash through like 3 or 4 QRs to get all of the multi-sig information over. Super useful. It's great.
Shout out to Seed Signer and the Spectre DIY wallet. I wanted to bring up Spectre here just because they deserve a shout out. It's best wallet out there. I hear good things about Sparrow too in a similar way, but I haven't used it yet. But I was going to say this whole Lightning discussion, what Lightning really needs is a Spectre wallet, something of that level, but for Lightning, because Spectre is just, after year, like, all respect to Electrum, after finally Spectre coming out, I'm like, finally, like a wallet that does what I intuitively want a wallet to do. And I'm not affiliated with Spectre, guys. This is just out of pure love. And there's every Lightning wallet. I've used every single one of them, guys, and every one of them does something that really annoys me. Like, a lot of the times, the thing that annoys me is I can't choose a fee. Like, I really want to choose a fee, and if the blocks are empty and I do a Lightning transaction that spent 56 sats per byte on a weekend when everything was 2 sats per byte getting in, I'm like, why? That's really frustrating that happened. I deliberately chose this time to close this channel, and you're going to charge me a huge fee anyway. That's one thing that's annoying. Every Lightning wallet has something about it that drives me nuts. So I know that Ben Kaufman, one of the main guys in Spectre Wallet, kind of thinks Lightning is not really all that good, which is a funny thing. Like, it is possible to think that and still be an amazing Bitcoiner, not a ridiculous person. But so I don't think Spectre themselves are going to implement Lightning like Electrum did. But nonetheless, it's wide open. Like, if you even Moon Wallet, as amazing as it is, it's still open for someone. How long did it take for Spectre to come and change the game when it came to Bitcoin wallets? I mean, it's years we've been waiting for something that good. So Lightning, all this development and excitement that's going on it, it's still wide open for someone to come along and make it a fantastic Lightning wallet. And you can use the Moon. You can use the Moon model where you're always in. You can receive just regular Bitcoin, and you're always in a Lightning channel, whether you like it or not. That's good, but just come along. It's wide open for you.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I wouldn't doubt if Sparrow were to do that. I know they're doing some interesting things. They've got such a cool setup, and they're just so interoperable, and they're doing so much work just making sure that just so many different things work. And from testing them out early on to doing a video like a few weeks or a month back or something. So much has changed, and it constantly does. So kudos to them. I know they're working hard. Yeah, Max, thank you for bringing up Bolt 12 and tagging on to the Lightning chat. I'm going to keep us rolling, and we're gonna do our final reason for being bullish. Jan, I know you've been a patient man this evening, so I'm going to toss it to you, and I'm going to ask you, why are you feeling bullish this week?
I knew this was gonna come, and I think I'm in the hardest position because guys pretty much covered all the different aspects. So anyways, I'll try.
Wait, aren't you bullish for the WhatsMiner firmware release that's coming tomorrow?
Tomorrow TM?
2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Coming soon. Anyway, so for the past week, what makes me sad and bullish at the same time are all the events in Afghanistan, which just it's a super shitty situation, and like watching the people, we're sitting here and chatting, and there's people like struggling there. I just can't imagine being there. Why I think this could be bullish is that it could strengthen additional AML, KYC, whatever you name it. And the more regulation we have, that's going to be reflected in the price, I would say. On a long run, we all, at least I was brought up in an environment where, I got a piggy bank, and I was brought up by my parents explaining me that it's good to save, for later, save some money. my piggy bank had a form factor of not a pig, but it was actually a snowman with his hand holding. So it has a nice groove, and you would see the coin rolling, down the snowman. And I was used to that. And like past few years basically teach people that saving money is a bad thing. You have to live from a loan, you have to buy everything from a loan, and the loan itself is not the problem. The problem is what you guys mentioned, that the loan has been provided from not from somebody else's money who put the money in the bank, but from the printed money that the bank just got almost for free. We're living in times when there's negative interest rates. My bank charges me negative interest rates for keeping euros in my account. That's, I mean, WTF? Is this 21st century? So I have no other option than being bullish. There was a beautiful interview with Max Kaiser. The interviewer was from CNBC South Africa, and like it was probably like 3 minutes, and it ends up like him, tearing up the $20 banknote and saying like, we have to do something. And I'm pretty much in line with whatever he said. We have to do something, and we're doing it. We just have to participate in this and trying to show people that there is alternative that doesn't depreciate like all the paper money. So this makes me bullish.
I like that you brought up the negative interest rates, because we kind of come full circle there back to some of the CBDC talk that we were having earlier on, because this is another easy thing that they can do with central bank digital currencies. Is if you've got a direct line to the central bank from your native digital wallet, yes, they can do like airdrops and UBI, but they can also say, if you don't spend this within a certain amount of time, we're going to start siphoning off some of your wealth because it's for the good of the economy. So, you're talking about negative interest rates in a bank account. People, you go just withdraw that. Eventually, that's not an option. And something obviously needs to be done. And I think we have the solution in front of us now. And I think it's going to be a painful road for those that don't realize what's happening quickly enough, because it's going to be painful. So I don't. Does anybody have anything to tag on to what Jan was saying here? Don't all jump in at once.
I hate awkward silences, man.
Go for it, Mechanican.
Well, look, I have it's a beautiful thing for a generation to rediscover the future and planning for that future and saving for it. And to me, HODL was a generation discovering savings through, a rhyming repetition of history, like not the same repetition, but it rhymes, right? History rhymes. And HODL is basically, I mean, I know it didn't start at that. We've all seen the ridiculous Bitcoin talk post where the guy was spelling hold wrong and just freaking out about his girlfriend being at a lesbian bar and just generally melting down. But I mean, to me, that's not what it is anymore. To me, HODL is just people saying you can have a future, save for that future, and don't spend today something that will be worth a lot more tomorrow unless you really need it. I mean, I don't want to just become a mouthpiece for Saifedean here, but we know that the Bitcoin standard is it ushers in a new era of quality. Like if you have anything from 150 years ago, like furniture or cookware or anything, it was built to last. But if you have anything that was made in the last 30 years, I mean, planned obsolescence is just a part of the fiat standard, right? Everything is junk. Like 99% of what you can buy is junk. Like even your house is junk. It will fall apart in a few decades. Like nothing is really made to last anymore. In a Bitcoin, under a Bitcoin standard, you just can't do that because people aren't going to buy stuff that isn't. If I buy a juicer, I want that thing to last for 40 years. If I buy a paper shredder or a light bulb or whatever, I need this stuff to last because I'm not going to spend, 3 Bitcoins on a car to have it only last a few years. Like I'm not going to do it. It needs to be something that's incredibly, something that can be handed down for generation after generation. So this ushering in a new era of quality is great. And then just saving, like, my daughter's 1.5. So the Bitcoin I got for her when she was born, what's happened to the price of Bitcoin in the last year and a half, it's the right move. And it means that we're taken off the treadmill of being forced to use something that only has one quality, which is medium of exchange, which is spend it as quickly as possible because it's not a store of value. And we can, like your definitions of it, Max, are a little different to mine. I'm coming at this thing without any formal economic training, but the idea of just having something that's utility is spend it, or it will lose its value very quickly because it's not designed to be a store of value, or you can't rely on the people that are in control of it to respect the fact that people are using it as a store of value. Means everything else is having its market distorted because people are buying houses as stores of value because they don't have money to use for it. So house prices aren't reflective of what they would be if people only bought houses as places to live or maybe to rent out. Instead, people buy them to store value. And then stocks and shares, meme stocks. People are literally just being like, money is worthless. Let's buy stocks we know are useless just to screw with people. Like, I mean, Jimmy Song wrote an article on it. He called it postmodern investing. And it's like nothing even has to have any... it's not the case that you buy a stock and share because you believe in a company. Like that's a ridiculous, outdated notion. You buy a stock because it's funny. You buy a stock because you want to screw over a hedge fund. You buy a stock basically because you don't have any respect for the money you're buying it with. And it's just, what a world to live in. It's just a complete and utter shit show. And Bitcoin comes along and says, look, you can't be silly or childish when you have me. If you don't know how to be secure, you will lose it. And if you are frivolous with your spending, you'll hate yourself in about 5 years. So both of those things are a call to adulthood and responsibility. And it's so good to see that coming along. And I really am trying to dial down on the utopianism and the brilliant the heralding of a new age of human prosperity that Bitcoin will bring in. I'm trying not to be too optimistic with it or too utopian in my thinking, but I can't help it. And the old, like you describing, putting cash in a little snowman with an arm with a hole in it, it's a fantastic thing. And it's a heartbreaking thing to tell a kid, you should probably spend those $3 soon, because I mean, what's inflation now? It's what, 15-20% a year? Like, it's bad. So, I mean, I think it's here. I think hyper Bitcoinization is happening already. I think the collapse of the US dollar is happening. I don't think it's about to happen. I think COVID accelerated the timeline insanely. Like, we didn't expect this to be the super cycle, right? The end of fiat, we didn't expect that, but here we are. I mean, COVID accelerated it. So it's time. Like, this is it. Get on board, everyone, if you're not already.
Yeah, Weimar vibes all around, man. The meme stock stuff you were talking about, same kind of shit. Again, pulling it full circle. That's a good portion of the first part of the book. People just buying shit just to buy shit because they didn't want the money. And I think we're kind of seeing it again. I wonder if because in that time, the people that were smart enough to preserve their capital were kind of looked down upon or seen as predators or like pariahs. I feel like we're in for that. I feel like we're the ones.
I've seen that in Canada. Christia, the finance minister, she was about 8 or 9 months ago. I saw her saying, too many Canadians have too much savings and it's harming our economic recovery plan. And this, I quote, if anyone has any ideas about how we can tap in to that untapped stimulus, please call in. This was like a TV show. She wanted Canadians to phone in and suggest ideas about how they might rob middle-class Canadians of their unfairly large savings accounts. Like, this was literally like, I mean, first off, you're just going to print your way out of it anyway, like you always do. So that just makes it ultra punitive, just coming after like the relatively successful people in your culture that have worked hard, that are still not really doing much better than anyone else, and you're going to come after them. It's just so punitive and evil. I just can't even begin to see like how you would even like look at yourself in the mirror after that. But second off, just the idea of like, call in, like make some suggestions. Like, it's literally like, guys, we're building a guillotine like to hang various peasants. Like, can you help us? Like, can you hold this piece of wood while I hammer in the nail? Like, just
yeah, it's wild to see. And I feel like, while it will be exciting to see things play out where Bitcoin is doing what it was built to do, it will also be scary to see the narrative that surrounds that, and the vitriol that people that don't understand what's happening come at Bitcoiners with. But
have you guys thought about a reason why do taxes still exist? Because they can pretty much print the money, right? So why do we have like two parallel ways how to steal?
Because wealth redistribution, there's a bunch of methods for doing it. One way is the Cantillon effect that Max was talking about, which is you get to decide where the newly printed money goes, and that's at least doesn't redistribute money itself, but does redistribute the purchasing power of what everyone has upwards, of course. But that's one way. Another way is actual taxation, which is, I mean, as you say, it's like it's ridiculous. But I mean, that's the question we've seen all over Bitcoin Twitter for a year, right? Is ask yourself why you pay taxes if they can just print the money they need. I guess the sort of mid-wit response to that is, well, if they just did that all the time, then inflation would happen, and that would be bad. And
not that it is not happening.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So
this is the problem that I'm seeing. That
I think it's just all technical debt, right? Like, you could argue that here's the efficient thing: use one mechanism. Don't use both taxation and money printing, because they're just two sides of the same coin. Just use one, but they can't, right? Because if you like, inflation is just a sneaky tax that no one would ever accept if it was done overtly. If you just had 8% of the money removed from your bank balance every year, you'd be annoyed about that. But instead, its purchasing power shrinks by the equivalent amount, and no one notices and goes, "God, why is gas so expensive? Oh, why is this so expensive? Oh my God, why is rent so expensive?" And they don't ever ask the question, why is my money worth nothing? They just keep asking why everything is so expensive. And I mean, isn't that the deliberate lack of education we have about economics in the school system?
Well, psychologically, it's a better approach.
Yeah. If taxes didn't exist, too many people would be asking questions about how the government can afford things, I imagine.
Good point.
Yeah, it's but hey, I mean, Jan, you're right. The conditions that are kind of prevalent right now are why Bitcoin exists. And I think that we're lucky enough to have been in the right place, right time, to have realized it. I think there are many out there that are very close to realizing it, but some may be set in like precious metals kind of mindsets, and it can be difficult to kind of get around that. I get the problem and I get the solution, but I just happen to choose the wrong medium, like Peter Schiff syndrome type thing. But yeah, I'm glad that Bitcoin's here. I'm glad that I'm glad that I get to be a part of it, kind of see what will be written in the history books. I hope it's largely
But you
positive.
see the interview. Actually, even Peter Schiff kind of admitted that he's kind of like sorry to or he feels bad that he didn't invest in Bitcoin. You saw that one this week?
Yeah, I saw it.
Fucking
He also said
hilarious.
he's sad that he missed it, but now it's too late
I
because it's
know.
gonna
Oh
end.
God! Don't you hate? You know what really hurts? I know you got to run off BTC, but you know what hurts me so much about that one is these people that get into shit coins or hear about Bitcoin, don't buy, and then the price is way up, and they're like, "Well, I missed that." I'm like, it's not going away. You're still gonna have to get into Bitcoin at some point. It's the longer you, and when people get into shit coins and get burnt, and then they write off the whole space, that's the main reason I'm so upset that they exist, because they'll buy some Bitcoin, then they'll find out about Binance Chain or whatever and just go ridiculously onto all that stuff, get burnt to death, and then their wife will sit there and be like, yeah, you're not touching crypto again. You're done with that whole thing. And, they're like, okay, I don't want to lose my wife over this whole thing. And they just abandon it. And I'm like, it's not going to be a thing that you sort of go, well, I made a mistake there. That was 5 years ago. I've got back on track now. It's fine. Bitcoin is here. It's what you're going to ultimately have to use and learn how to use correctly. So at some point, you have to bite the bullet and go, that Bitcoin thing, yeah, I can't really afford not to use it anymore. At some point, you can't afford not to be a Bitcoiner. And these people it really sucks if you set a wrong foot and you get burnt. Then it's a major psychological test to accept that, oh, hold on, I made a mistake, but I need to actually get back into this thing.
Yeah, it's going to be the challenge for everybody. Like I think you're right. The ones that have been the most stubborn, or the ones that got in, got burnt, got out, and then have to re-enter, those are the ones that are going to be the most difficult. I have seen some positive developments this round, in particular the past couple of years, of people coming in and almost immediately or right off the bat going Bitcoin only. I think that's very positive, and I think it's in part due to a cohesive narrative around why Bitcoin that has been cultivated over the years. And yeah, I think that's a positive development, and I hope to see that trend continue. Hopefully, when a bunch of other shit coins get washed out again, and we see kind of, if we see another cycle, we'll see a lot more of that rather than rushing into shitcoin casinos. But who knows? Who knows? Gentlemen, I'm going to wrap up here. I thank you all so much for your time being here and sharing your bullish reasons with me this week. Let's just quickly go around one more time, remind people who you are, where they can find you. I'll toss to Bitcoin Mechanic first. Take it away.
Sure. Thanks, man. So I'm on Twitter at Grass-Fed Bitcoin, just so you don't confuse my accent and think I'm saying CrossFit. I'm saying grass-fed, like the best kind of beef you can eat. It's grass. It eats grass, like we all know. And I work for Start9. You can go to start9.com and check out the Embassy OS project, which is a whole self-sovereign suite for people that want to do instant messaging or social networking, or obviously just Bitcoin and Lightning and things like that in a self-sovereign way where they're not depending on any third parties, but in a way with no technical challenges to it. You can just buy a box, plug it in and go, but it's open source as well, right? So if you want to compile it yourself, you can go for it too. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, man.
No worries. Mimab, you're up. Oh, dude, I think you're muted. I think. Oh,
fair point. Okay, yeah. No, I'm not. You can find me at Bitcoin Meme Hub on Twitter. Basically, just kind of like just a warning. If you follow me, there's a bunch of shit posts.
Come for the shit posts. Highly recommend. Thanks for being on, man. Max, how about you? One more time, where can people find you?
Well, my personal website is towardsliberty.com, and find me on Twitter, GitHub, and all the places at Max Hillebrand.
Dude, thank you very much. And Jan, let people know where they can find you.
I'm on Twitter under Jan Brains, and you can find anything that we do with Brains Company under brains.com, Brains OS, and the Slush Pool brand. and start saving instead of the piggy bank. Thanks for inviting me to your talk.
Yeah, no worries. Guys, thank you very much. Anybody watching, of course, all of these gentlemen, their Twitter handles are listed below in the show notes. Give them a follow, check them out. And gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for your time. Loved talking bull with you. Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening if you're on the pod afterwards. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and share. All of those things help so much. They help get this content in front of more eyeballs. Now, if you want to help with the show in another way, you can hit up the previously mentioned sponsors down below: LEDN, Bitbuy, Bitrefill, Keystone, and BillFodl at Privacy Pros. And if you really liked what you saw, you can always drop me a Bitcoin tip at my strike.me page. That is strike.me/BTC sessions. When you get there, you can type in any amount you like. You hit the tip button, you'll be greeted with a Lightning QR code, or if you click to the right, a regular Bitcoin QR code. Use whatever you please. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day or evening wherever you may be, and I'll see you guys next time for your daily session.
Hodl the Bitcoin.